Okay. All right. So let's start with this one. This is actually your Windows Server 2019. Okay. So this is the one that we had installed previously. Now with this Windows Server 2019, the first thing we are going to do is, so we're going to do step one. All right, we are going to go one by one. We're going to perform a series of steps. The first one being, we are going to try to rename this computer. Okay. And to do that, we can do multiple set of steps, but first thing is over here. Okay. And one other thing, just give me a minute. Just give me 1 minute. It's not working properly actually. Multiple. Every other device except this doesn't work. Okay. All right. Okay. Had I got two computers, it would have been much better. But that's okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Here you go. So you should be able to see my screen again. Just give me a minute. And want to shut down. Okay. All right. Okay. Now back into this machine. All right. And I'm going to just make it like this. So back into this machine. Okay. This is a machine called Windows Server 2019, but it actually has something called nested virtualization. This is happening. Please. What's this? Okay. 1 second. I will share again. I don't know what is the matter. On the tools, there is a Hyper-V manager. So inside the virtual machine, there is nested virtualization. And there is another machine which is called, say for example, there are multiple virtual machines. So inside one virtual machine, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 virtual machines. Okay. So let's do one thing. I mean, this is one of the virtual machines, but we are not going to use that, but this is nested virtualization. Many virtual machines inside the virtual machine. For us, what we'll do is we will go back in our hypervisor. If I need to access one of the machines, I can right click and I can start the virtual machine. There I can work on this. So say for example, I start the virtual machine. A little bit slow because it is inside another virtual machine sharing its resources. Okay. So it is asking me to configure. Do you see that? These are the same configuration steps that you were asked to do, isn't it? You have previously done them. All right. So same configuration steps that you had previously done when you configured your Windows 2019 on your computer. All right. So same steps are being asked, but what I'll do is I will just not do them. I will actually turn it off. I'm going to try to restart it again this time. Okay, it will always ask me to go ahead and configure this before I can move ahead. Okay. So it is asking me always to configure. Until I configure the first set of steps, it will not let me move ahead. Okay, let's do that then. Can you switch? I'll switch it up. What to do? Very difficult. There's one light. Can't see anything. Should have been one here. So sorry. Okay. So let's quickly do the steps that are required to configure. All right. So let me say, yes, I am in the United States and I can install my Windows Server 2019 now. Setup will start. Now here you have all the 4 options available. All right. I will right now still choose the standard desktop experience, but I'm going to show you how to install server core also. That's one thing I will show you, which is without the GUI. I will accept all the terms. I will proceed ahead. And these will be the series of steps which are taken to configure Windows. Okay. Share my screen again. Okay. All right. So let's set the administrator password. Set it. Okay, which is the stage that you have after. And let's finalize the settings. Okay, so looks like the settings are applied and we should be able to log in into the machine. Okay. This will apply all the settings that I need. And once that is done, I will actually open PowerShell and I'm going to show you how to change the names. Just give it a minute. All right. Okay, it's a little slow. Let's go to the server manager. Ideally, it should open automatically, but that's okay. I'll just cross it right now. We are going to go to tools and we are going to go to Windows PowerShell. Okay, to change the name. All right. So first thing is we need to know what is the name. Then only we can change the name. So to know the name of the computer presently, we are going to type host name, which will print the host name for me. This is not very good. So let us change the name to rename computer. The new name for this would be lab SA02, which feels more relevant. Okay. But what does it say? It says that this will only work after I have restarted the machine. Okay. That's what it is saying. It is saying that it will not work until I restart the machine. Okay. Okay. Nevertheless, let's continue. We can actually restart it in the next few minutes. In the meanwhile, let's continue. Let's see how we can set up our Ethernet connection. First, I will do ipconfig/all. This will show me what is the present IP configuration for me. And I do see that I have some IP related configuration set up, but can you see the IP address for me is APIPA 169.254.97.229. This means that the computer is not connected to any outside external network and therefore will not be able to connect to any machine. So first I need to set an IP address. Now, one way to set the IP address is to right click on your machine over here, go to Windows and network settings. Okay, that's via the GUI. All right. But I'll show you how to do it via the command line, by the way. Then you should go to network and sharing center. I'm going to go to change adapter settings. Now over here, if I right click, go to the properties, then go to IP version 4 properties, I can actually set up parameters right here. Okay. However, not always will you get the opportunity to do it via the GUI. If you wanted to do it via the command line, you can go back to your PowerShell. There you can change and you can set up an IP address. I'm going to set up using the command called netsh interface IP version 4 set address for my Ethernet. Okay. As static 192.168.0.8 and the subnet mask is, sorry, it should be 255, my bad. 255.255.255.0. Okay. So I can set up an IP address for myself. Okay. For the Ethernet, this is the Ethernet. Can you see on the top? Ethernet adapter, Ethernet. So for my Ethernet, I can set a IP version 4 address. It is a static IP address, all right, which means it doesn't change between boots. It will not change between boots, all right. And I'm going to set it here. Once there is no confirmation that it is set, but it is set. Next, I also need to set and add a domain name system. So I am a client. Okay. Remember, there is one of the configuration required to configure as a client. I will also configure a server, but as a client, if I want to add an existing DNS server, net sh interface IP version 4, add DNS Ethernet 192.168.0.1. Okay. All right. And once you are done with these, once again, there is no confirmation. If you now do IP config all, you should be able to see that your IP address is updated. Do you see that? It is now updated to, yeah, very right. So it is updated to 192. So if you look at the one on the top, it was a PIPA IP address, but now that is changed. Look below, you can see a DNS server has been added. Look at the IP address, and IP address also been added. So both the IP version 4 address along with the subnet mask along with the DNS has been set up for you. Okay. All right. Now I will just ping. So my domain is called Practice Labs. I'm going to ping just to check. And looks like I'm able to ping now. All right. It is pinging the DNS server 192.168.0.1. Looks like I have been able to connect. Now let me shut down the machine. Okay. How can I shut down? Either I can shut down by going on the right upper corner, powering it down, going to the left side. Otherwise, can I shut down from the prompt? Yes. What is the command to shut down? Shut down. Okay. I believe the flag is, because remember, my PC will only be renamed after I shut down. All right. So I put shutdown /r/t0. Don't wait. Immediately shut down. That's what it means. Okay. Don't wait for anyone. Immediately shut down and restart my machine. Give it a minute. Okay. All right. It is actually shut down. It will actually restart, and then I need to set it up. Okay. Just give me a minute. Okay. I have to put that Control Alt Del to log in. All right. So it takes 1 or 2 minutes. So we'll just give it a minute. Now let's log in back again. I'm going to log in over here. First, I'll enter into the computer, put in my password, which I had configured. This was the one that I configured when I was creating the machine. I will log in into it. Let it be. Okay. I will wait for the server manager to open. And once it opens, I will again go to the Windows PowerShell. I'll show you both the ways. So one way to add this machine to the domain. So before, once again, to repeat, to add the machine to the domain, you should be connected via DNS. All right. You should have a static IP address. I'm going to go to the tools, go to the Windows PowerShell. Okay. To add a machine to the domain should already have been configured. Okay. But we'll just also see that this is how to add a machine to the domain, which is what we are talking about, which is using PowerShell. I would use add computer. Okay. Domain credential. Okay. So I need to know the credential or login of the machine which is my domain controller. Okay. So I need to be able to log in from this machine. So I will say add computer domain credential, put in the domain name, practice labs, put in the administrator password. So administrator username for the domain name. The domain name is called practicelabs.com. Okay, that's the name of the domain. You may have your own domain. All right. So when I say this, it will ask me, prompt me for the password of the administrator. But before I do that, I also want to show you what if I did not want to do it from the command prompt? What if I want to do it from here? From here means from this GUI. For that, you will go to the, in fact, there are two ways to do this again. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to check. Go to this PC properties. Here, do you see that? Change name, domain, and work group settings. Go to change settings. Then here, where they are saying rename the computer or change its domain, click on change. And then here, put in the domain name, which is Practice Labs. Okay. But this is from the graphical user interface. Okay. Whatever I can do from the graphical user interface, I can. So just put in that practicelabs.com over here. All right. And it will again prompt you. And the screen that you will prompt is the one that I'm showing you at the back here on the PowerShell. Okay. So same screen will be prompted over here. Okay. Whatever I'm writing over here is the same steps you would have done by a graphical user interface. Okay. Gonna press enter and it opens a window. This would be the same window that would be open had I typed it at the back. Okay. On this GUI. I'm going to put it here. Okay. Something is wrong. What does it say? Domain credential. Okay. All right. Okay. I got it. So the mistake is here. I think I need to put a hyphen here. Just give me a minute. I will just check. It should be hyphen domain name. Yeah, I think I ate a hyphen. Here you go. Now let's try. Oh yes, again it gave me. All right. So looks like I was successfully able to add the device to the domain. But what does it say? Once again, it says I need to wait for the machine to restart for the changes to take effect. Let me do that. Shut down. Let's give it a minute. I still have to wait for it to restart. Right. Now this time we will log in using the other user and then put in, can you see the domain is showing below? All right. We will keep the username and password that we had set originally in the machine. We'll just do this. All right. So looks like I have been successfully able to log in via the domain. I will just check that again. And next, let me actually show you. This was me enrolling to a domain controller. What if I want to set up my own Active Directory domain controller? Now, what are those steps? Let's do that. All right. So to do that, first, let's just do one little check just to see where we are. Go back to our C drive, properties. Are you able to see that I'm now joined to the domain practice labs? Do you see that? So instead of the work group that was initially there, I have now joined to a domain. Now, what if I wanted to be my own domain controller? What could I have done? So to do that, one, we need to be on the server manager. If you go to the server manager, on the top corner, there is something called tools. In the tools, you can see already existing features that are available to you. If you want to add more features, you will go to manage. And within that, you can add new roles and features. The one that we wish to add would be, and I'll just keep going next. This is a role-based feature, not a remote desktop feature. This is a role-based feature. And the one that I want to add is for this computer, which I actually set up, which is Windows 9192.168. I set the IP address recently. I want to set it up as the, remember, Active Directory domain services. All right. And the moment I do that, it says you will also have to install so many other things with it, including Active Directory. Do you see that? So this is if I wanted to install via the graphical user interface. What if I did not want to install via the graphical user interface? What would I have done? I would have used the command line interface. Okay, let me show you how you can do that. And I'm going to cancel this because I'm not going to do it via GUI. But had I wanted to do it via GUI, I had the availability also. But that just needs for me to do next. And that I believe one can do. Instead, if I want to do it via the PowerShell command prompt, I will go to Tools, Windows PowerShell. There I will do Add Windows feature name AD domain services and include management tools. All right. So add Windows feature, which is the features that we saw. Name Active Directory domain services and followed by include all relevant management tools that I have. This is from PowerShell. Let's click on it. Let's see what happens when we request it to get added. It's showing 10%, etc., which means it takes a few minutes to install. Now, once I finish this installation, there are two things I can do. The first thing is, you do know you only have one Windows server, isn't it? But in a real production environment, no one has one Windows server. It's like asking for bringing down the network if you have one. Usually you have two computers. All right, one serves as the primary and the backup of that is synced to another computer. All right, so I know one cannot do that in a lab type of an environment, but say for example in this environment, if I did want to have, I already had another domain controller which one would already do. What if I want to make a second domain controller? So I can add a domain controller to the existing environment and I can sync it or back up all the data from the primary to this one, which means now I have more than one domain controller serving my organization. How can I do that? I can actually say install Active Directory domain services domain controller for an existing domain. Incidentally, I'm logged in into the domain, isn't it? I'm logged in as a user into the domain. I will say domain name, same, practicelabs.com. All right. So I will install Active Directory domain services domain controller and I can add myself as a domain controller to an existing domain. All right. So I'm one of the domain controllers as a part of that domain. You don't have to do it, but in a real production environment, you should be able to add because you need redundancy and resilience. You can't just have one Active Directory domain controller server. That is not sufficient. Now, when you try to run this command, it will ask you for, can you see safe mode administrator password? This is set as the password of the original domain controller. And it says the target will be configured as the domain controller and restarted. You don't need to say yes. Yeah. Otherwise, it will not work. Isn't it? So I will say yes to all is an option number A. I will say yes to all. Okay. Because I don't want to be troubled unnecessarily in the middle of the installation. Okay. And it has given you some flagged, some concerns, but it is what it is. We'll leave it. So it takes time, but this would be a new domain controller to your existing domain. And never in a production environment should you have just one Active Directory domain controller. That's a criminal offense. Please have more than one. Okay. And okay. So it is signed out automatically. Your computer will be restarted. I will say close. Let it be restarted on its own. Okay. You can give it a minute to restart. Restart on its own according to me. It's restarting on its own. So now we are going to verify whether we do see the Active Directory domain list of users. All right, that's what we are going to verify. There should be new tabs called Active Directory users and computers, which should start appearing in my tools because I've added a new role. Plus, I should now be able to see all the Active Directory users and computers of the practicelabs.com domain, which is where I have added myself as the domain controller. Let's check whether we can access all of them or not. Okay, let's log in again. And now if you notice, if we go to the tools, can you see new inputs requiring Active Directory related options have begun to appear for me, which did not exist previously. One of them is Active Directory users and computers, which are all the Active Directory users and computers of the domain practice labs. Let's have a look. What are those practice labs? So I can see the domain practicelabs.com does appear for me. All right. Okay.